Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the next in the series of Deepcrawl webinars. My name's Jon Myers. If you've been here before, I've hosted these ones for you. Obviously, my name's Jon Myers, and I will be your host. And again, we have a fantastic subject for you, and we'll have a great presenter for you today as well, as you can imagine. So today we're going to be talking about building a successful SEO strategy for 2022 and beyond. And I mean, it's a great topic to kind of kick off into the start of the year with and think about the different things that are changing in the marketplace. We had a huge amount of sort of different core updates from Google back end of 2021. We're now sort of shifting to the different mode of 2022 and some of the new things that are coming. And I think it's really important to think about how we go about this part of the process. It's one of those areas that some people just sometimes don't give it the credit that it's credit due. So as I mentioned, we have a great presenter, which is Nik Andreev, who's a freelance SEO consultant, is former SEO manager of Experian. Nik, thank you for taking the time to be here with us.
Thanks for having me, John.
No, anytime. I'm really looking forward to this one. And if you've been with us before, you know how this works. If you haven't, just to give you a quick flow of the whole process and the format that we're going to look at today, we're going to go for about 25 minutes of presentation, might be 30 minutes of presentation followed by Q&A. Please do submit your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen as we go. If something really takes your interest and you'd like to hear more from Nik on it, get the questions into me now so I can start collating them. So when Nik's finished, we can jump straight into that Q&A and go for it. And that's obviously in the Q&A box that you will have down at the bottom of the screen. As always, we record these sessions, and it's really important that we give you that ability to watch it back through the next day. And alongside that, we'll obviously be live on the DC blog with a full write-up with all of the main points and that recording for you guys to be able to dive into this at your own leisure. And please, at the end of this session, take the time to give us some feedback. It takes about 15 seconds. We'd just like to get a few questions and answers from you, just on the basis of, how did we do? Was it great? Well, could it be better? Who would you like to see on the next webinars? It's worked really well for us over the years. So this is a big year for SEO, without a doubt. There's so many changes and updates that have occurred. And from last year going into this year, more and more businesses can be found actually driving into the online space and trying to drive their online presence. And SEO is going to be a massive part of that. So today really is all about answering that question for you guys and giving you some thoughts around how strategically you can have success in 2022 as we go forward. I'm really looking forward to this one, as much as you guys are. The content is great, so no pressure on Nik to present that content back to us. Get those questions ready. And I look forward to getting into the Q&A afterwards. So as we go, please submit along the way. And Nik, over to you. The floor is yours for the next 25 to 30 minutes. And I'm looking forward to this. And I'm sure everybody is here with too.
Amazing. Thank you, John. And thanks for the intro again. So like John said, my name is Nik and I do SEO, and my consulting company is called Nik Does SEO. I like to keep things simple. And have been involved in the industry in some way for about 10 years, and I've been doing it for about 6 years full time, and I've been freelance since October last year. So it's still kind of new doing the freelance bit, but it's very exciting. I must tell you that. I'm sure there will be a few freelancers joining us today. So my approach to SEO is about creating website experiences which meet users' needs. And as a consultant, I try to help my clients improve their website in such a way that they can integrate SEO in almost every area of their business. And the key themes that I want to talk about today are basically around that. I want to bring something new to the table today. I know there's a lot of content on SEO strategy out there, so I thought about covering some of my experience and my past projects and some of the insights I've learned over the past few years. And I think what I want to talk about today will hopefully be relevant and important to SEO for the long term. So you may say that it's evergreen. So the three areas that we'll focus on today are, well, the first one is about getting to know your product and business. And we talk about expanding the new businesses coming into the market, which I'll talk about. The second one is about learning from your users. The third one and final one is about building relationships. So before I kick off the first point, I wanted to highlight a couple of stats from the UK around how how many new businesses have been launched over the past year. And in March in 2021, according to the UHY, more new businesses were created than in any other month since records began in 1989. And there were almost 726,000 new businesses created in the UK in 2020, compared to just over 636 in the previous year. And to give more context, I wanted to also show this kind of interesting highlight, which I found 2 days ago, which is from the US. And it says that about 70 million US employees want to start a business in 2022. Obviously, there's been a massive negative impact due to the pandemic, which has led, unfortunately, many small businesses to close down. But it's quite clear that many people are either leaving their jobs or thinking about leaving to start their own companies. And with that, like Jon mentioned, many new companies will probably start turning their heads towards SEO. And that's why I want to start with this. So for SEO, I believe everything begins with a good product, good brand, and overall business. And when you start looking at it, you should kind of take a step back from your day-to-day responsibilities. If you're an SEO consultant or working in-house, it's really easy to lose that broad view of how your company and other marketing channels are performing, and you lose track of potentially how things are going. Or if you're a business owner or you're just starting out, you have to keep a certain amount of open mind when it comes to SEO, and keep thinking about what factors could influence it. So in a way, you should look at your business through the eyes of users and through the eyes of the algorithm, but think about how to position not just your SEO strategy, but your business as a whole to be the best it can be for users and the best it can be in the industry it operates in. And it should be an integral part to any business strategy, because it can give you so much information about the users, and you just can't afford to use it. Your company's goals are probably on a very high level the same as your SEO goals, which is to attract users and to generate revenue. And there are things which are very important to both, which we will talk about later on in these slides. So when I work with clients, or I in the past I've worked in-house, I always think about, and it's probably something that it's echoed around the industry, is your website better than your competitors? And is it bringing in anything new to users? Are you solving their problems? What are you doing differently that nobody else is doing? And when it comes to website optimization, you can just literally look at a page and think, can this be improved to provide even more value to users? And can it be better for their experience? And I'm not talking about just written text, but what other design elements can be introduced to engage users, or even other technical changes which can potentially help them get to the information they're looking for quicker. So I believe that SEO can become part of almost every business function, like I mentioned in the beginning, and insights can be shared with obviously the wider marketing team, and you can learn from them too. But also you can share information on search trends, and any insights you can learn about users, their habits, and you can share that with your product team. You can share that information with your customer service team, who potentially kind of keep your users happy. And all of that is underlined by a solid technical foundation. So obviously there is a lot of that depends on your technical development team to get done. So algorithms always look for ways, obviously, to surface the best and most relevant content. And when you approach planning your strategy, you can position your thinking in a way and tell yourself or ask yourself, can you convince users to choose you over competitors? Can you convince the algorithms? And a good starting point is obviously content, but another one which is often not really looked at is trust. And what kind of signals will the algorithm see in terms of your reputation online? What is the sentiment towards your brand? And that's probably more relevant to bigger companies with some levels of brand awareness. But as we know, as SEO consultants, if your website has anything to do with health, finance, anything that can impact people's lives, the bar is very high. So I can guarantee you that when you sit down and look at a website or just a single page, that page can be improved, whether that's from a technical or from a content point of view. There is always something that you can see, spot, and improve. And that's the charm of SEO. It never settles. It's constantly changing. And that's why you need to constantly test and learn and keep an open mind. In previous companies I have worked for, and that's something I try to bring in my day-to-day consultancy, is to try and test and not guess as much as possible. And the nature of SEO is, well, we have to guess to a certain extent, but as a business, and you have to always see the Google guidelines as well, but as a business, you also probably have access to other data, which can give you an accurate view, or at least something that can help you make strong assumptions, and you can then test those. So what I recommend is getting really good at tracking what users do on your website. It's something which is integral to any strategy, and it should be part of every strategy going forward. And I'm not talking about tracking form submissions and the usual sales conversions, and you can obviously do a lot with Google Tag Manager, but think about what call to actions users use the most. You can track internal search results, which probably not new, but many non-e-commerce websites don't do well, and it's often overlooked. You can even track what text users copy from your website, and you can try to gauge and understand why are they copying that, why that piece of text is valuable to them. You can obviously track file downloads, especially if you have free templates and you're trying to rank for that. And an obvious one for affiliates is affiliate link clicks. You can rely on UTM tracking, but if you don't have visibility on their side, then it's important for you to know what's actually happening from your side. In a way, all of that will help you understand what are your, I guess, strengths, like what works well for you, what doesn't work so well. It gives you a good idea of what you can improve on. And the insights you can extract are basically invaluable. And that's how you can get close to kind of getting away from guessing and trying to understand what's more concrete and what works well for your business. The second key theme I want to talk about today is the constant learning from users, which it should be given these days. I know it's hard, and not every company has the budget for it. But to kick off this section, I wanted to highlight a quote from Martin Splitt from an episode from their podcast called Search of the Record. And he says, and I quote, I would love to see more companies do user testing, as in trying to understand who are your users and then actually having a conversation with them. Because what I think is the best content for my users might not be what users think is the best content for them. And that comes straight from Google, so you can't really ignore that when they say things like that. So like I mentioned, SEO never settles. You can follow guidelines, but nothing really beats feedback from real people using your website in the real world. And algorithms change, users' expectations change, search behavior changes. The industry you're in is changing. So it's true that SEO can take a long time to gain traction, and it can be a slow process sometimes. But this sometimes gives the wrong impression, because SEO, as SEOs, we have to be adaptable and be able to respond to this ever-changing landscape. We have to keep up. Some companies, I find, run short tests, sometimes for a particular area of the website, or they're testing a particular feature on a page, or when they launch a new product, in fact. But I want to see this shift towards a continuous learning with a solid process in place to extract the insights that really matter. And you can learn, there's a lot you can learn from digital sources and on-site information. And like I mentioned, you can do the usual surveys, heat maps, analyzing user journeys. And there is also publicly available data you can get your hands on. And one I particularly like, if you're in the finance industry, is the Money Charity. It's a non-profit company which publishes data on debt and just how healthy the UK population is in terms of their debts. And one area which is often ignored or not even regarded is learning from non-online sources, non-digital ways. You can organize interviews with customers, you can organize focus groups, and sometimes you may be surprised how much you can find. Sometimes you can get insights which are not immediately clear or available online. Which takes me to the next point, which is what kind of feedback you should be looking at or should be looking for. Once you've identified your resources or the way you're going to gather that information from users, it's very important to pinpoint the feedback you want. What are the things that you want to learn from them? Like trying to understand that every test will have a lot of variables, and you need to set your assumptions and your kind of expectations in a way from the get-go to get the correct data. So user testing will show exactly which parts of your website frustrate people, for example, where they get confused or what keeps them from converting or completing whatever goal you're trying to get to do. And you can see whether there is a misunderstanding of your messaging in the copy, and if there is any misalignment between what they expect to see versus what actually happens on your website. And sometimes it can be something really small, like there is a claim or a marketing message which just confuses people, which actually reduces your click-through rates. But that's, yeah, just one example. There's a lot of things that you can look at. But you know, what matters is that will help you understand intent as well. And I know meeting user intent has been talked about so much over the past few years that really no one can afford not to create this feedback loop where you constantly learn from users. And again, that's another key part of your strategy, or should be part of your strategy going forward. So you know what you see resources, or you know what kind of ways you're gathering data, and you probably know what kind of feedback you're looking for. But what do you do with all this information? And how do you translate that information to something that you can use to optimize your website? So search algorithms obviously try to assess websites through the eyes of real users. Sometimes Google gets it right, sometimes not so much, but as SEOs and business owners should really stay focused on people first. There is a real value in going through the results and translating this user feedback into tangible things. Well, you can translate that user feedback into design changes, content changes, and this kind of would require working closely with design and your design teams, and probably user experience team if you're a bigger company, your development teams, to work together and create prototypes which can then further be tested and be put in front of real people. And once the changes are live, again, we go back to tracking, getting really good at tracking and monitoring your traffic and just understanding what's actually happening. But there is, I must highlight, there is always a risk. As with any test, like if you're testing it on a page that generates a lot of conversions for you, maybe your conversion rate will go down. Maybe you'll see a decline in rankings. And sometimes the feedback users give you may not be the best feedback. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind. But there is a lot to be gained. If things go right, yeah, your rankings will improve, potentially your conversions will improve, and your revenue, which is what the bottom line is. The third and final part of this is all about building relationships and how you can maximize the value of SEO with help from other teams and with insights that you can share with them as well to make their work better. And that graphic there is probably not new to many of you, but I thought it was worth highlighting that SEO just touches on so many different teams and can be included in so many different areas of a business. You either, as an SEO consultant, need help from these, or you can feed SEO insights to them to help them do better. Clearly, from what we just saw, SEO can really work in isolation and needs to be integrated with other teams within the company. Very important. Excuse me. This is very important for larger organizations or companies just starting out with SEO. And what I find works really well is if you're just starting out and you're building a new business or a startup, think about how you can get SEO involved from the get-go. It's much easier from the beginning to build those relationships. And if you're a bigger company, that will probably require more time. But the bottom line is it's something that will help everyone build a better website or better business. So naturally, communication is key to getting that buy-in and support from the wider team. And like I mentioned, it's super easy for us SEOs to get bogged down by the detail and not do a good job at communicating. But I find being able to communicate and get your point across and just be able to get people to be on your side is probably just as important as the craft or knowing the craft. If you're struggling to make a business case for SEO projects, you can't get the investment, you can't get the budget or the resource, you can't get the results, and you get stuck. And that's what you want to avoid when you plan your strategy. So one thing that you can keep in mind when working with other teams is to think about what's in it for them. Why should they spend time helping you drive SEO? So you kind of have to become the champion of SEO in your organization, share insights, share your achievements, especially when you do better than the competitors. And what I find works really well is sharing what competitors are doing well, better than us, and that normally always turns people's heads and gets their attention. So obviously, we're going to delve into this a little bit, and this is how the teams can help SEO, and you can do a lot by using the usual SEO tools and learning from competitors and all of that. But there is a lot of value in using insights available from your own teams, your own product team, your sales team, commercial, customer service, etc. And you can use proprietary data to improve your content, for example, to communicate expertise and trust a bit better, or to help manage users' expectations. You can highlight, for example, how long does your sign-up process take? And you can just have that near the sign-up button. Maybe you can highlight which company expert wrote that particular content piece. You can service people from your team to review the content if that's something you're focusing on. But in addition to that, you can look at marketing claims, which are probably approved to be used in other channels, and claims which can be used by your TV, above the line or TV team. And it's sometimes something that can add that extra bit of value to a page. So for example, if you know how much your users save by using your service over others, then that's something you can shout about on a page. Or how many users use a product. Just little things that can increase user engagement and probably make a small difference. But all of these things can small kind of things can add up. Another one, which is a good example, is you can try to understand which products generate the most revenue. If you have a financial website and say you have a selection of credit cards and you know that just a particular type of credit card users love and they come to your brand for that card, and it's the one that generates the most revenue, then that can help you understand how you can position products on the page and help you understand which pages drive the most, I guess, revenue from organic search. Similarly, your customer support team, well, you speak to clients all day, every day, and there should be stuff you can learn from them. What kind of questions people have, what are the most common, barriers they see when dealing with your brand. It's just a lot of insights you can gain from all the different teams that you can use to optimize your website better. And I want to highlight that there isn't obviously one correct way of approaching this, but the key thing is to start off with understanding what resources you have access to, and then try to connect all the dots to get the full picture, and then try to understand and find any gaps that information can help you fill. So clearly, there is a lot that you can learn from other teams, and there's a lot you can take from others to improve your work. But you have to also think about what you can give back as an SEO. And I find that what's worked really well for me in the past is that I would always look for opportunities to add value to the work of others, or always look for ways to improve decision making when the business is facing changes, or a team is going through a project and they just haven't thought about involving SEO. There is a lot of search insights which the wider team would appreciate. Like I mentioned, your customer support team, from the other side, you can help them understand what questions people search for online, especially if you're launching a new product and people naturally will have questions. And where people go, you know what happens next. Sales team, you can help them understand seasonality, and you can help them understand what the search volumes are through the year. Obviously, not exact science, but it can give a good idea to them about what's actually happening in the market. Your above the line team, new TV ad is launched, your brand search spikes, then search volumes will go up and you see more brand traffic coming to your website. And that's more information for you to sift through and find what actually happens on your website from brand search. And again, when you share those insights and the organic results to other teams, I find it's always appreciated, especially in teams which aren't close to marketing in general. And a lot of teams can just miss out on little pieces of information, which could be something that leads to a better user experience. So the key point here really is to nurture relationships and try to add value to everyone that you work with, so you can get your work done, but also improve the work they do. And I almost want to challenge you to think what you can bring to the table for your team and how you can give back, and see what happens. With all that in mind, I wanted to summarize what a good SEO strategy could lead to. Ideally, it leads to long-term sustainable organic growth, hopefully easier to get support from key stakeholders in your company, hopefully better resilience to organic, to changes in their algorithm. We don't know what happens, but you never know. Better user experience and satisfaction, increase visibility of SEO in your organization by building those relationships, and at the end, happier teams. Before I go, I want to finish with Google's mission statement. which says that their mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. So can you make this your mission statement, create useful content that provides value to people, that's easily accessible to all users? Maybe that's how you get potential customers to choose you over competitors. Thank you.
Brilliant, Nick. Thank you so much for that. Some really, really useful information and some really interesting insights as well. And it certainly got me thinking about a few of these things, and certainly some challenges I've seen over the years when you're talking SEO to the wider business and everything like that. You're really hitting home on those. I guess I'd like to open up with, just from a point of view of my perspective as well, just get your view on it. It's what I call the old sort of SEO to CMO sort of scenario. You know, for me, it's, you know, how do you take what is SEO, which historically, you know, if you had a CMO of a big company who kind of just basically hasn't got a clue about SEO, and, you know, CMOs are getting more and more into their SEO and they're getting more and more in depth to their knowledge of SEO. You know, how do you take it, rather than, as you say, taking up the line and talking to the different teams within the business? How do you go and get that budget secured for SEO on the marketing budget by, you know, approaching the CMO, and how does that conversation, you know, go in your eyes? And then ultimately, what have you found a successful way as an ex-in-house person, as Experian, to get in the budget you need to go and do the best job you can? Because, as you say, SEO is such an integral part of everything that we do.
Good question. I think a key part is communication and being able to adapt to the different people you're talking to. SEO obviously can be very technical, but when you talk to people who are higher up, they wouldn't really care about the detail. And what your challenge is how do you translate the details and insights you find online and in your strategy to someone who doesn't understand or doesn't really care about the detail. So communication will be the answer, one of the answers for me. And that's something that a lot of people should be thinking about, and to be more adaptable. The second thing that helps, or has helped me, is just doing the usual business case, like forecasting and trying to showcase what we can achieve if things are done right, what kind of rankings or traffic you can expect. And all forecasting is not always easy with SEO, but you can gauge and you can try to give them an idea of scale. You say, these are the things we can do. This is where we can be. These are the 3-4 scenarios in terms of levels of investment. If you invest this much, probably be here. If you invest this much, you'll be here, potentially. And then what I find works well is tying that with competitors and like show them what competitors are doing, what kind of returns they're getting, and try to understand what their revenue is potentially, if you can get it to that level of detail.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, because we've got so much insight tools available to us. I think that's a great point, is actually saying, you know, the competitor piece, and saying, you know, this is what our competitors are doing, this is how visible they are, this is where we are, and we need to be where they are. It's kind of creating that FOMO position as well. And I think it's interesting that you think about it from an educational point of view, that, you know, educating the C-suite and educating the senior team to, you know, how well SEO can be as a long-term strategy channel for them for a very effective cost. With that in mind, we had a question from one of the attendees as well. So, as they say, SEO works with so many teams. And which teams would you prioritize improving SEO visibility with internally? You know, if you've got, is there 2 or 3 or 4 teams that you would go, right, I've got to go and speak to these guys. I'm new in the business. I'm the SEO guy, and I have to get on board these parts of the business, or I'm not going to succeed in my role.
I guess it would depend on the organization, but I find in the past I've really tried to build strong relationships with the content and the PR teams, because they are the guys who would write the copy, and they would be in charge of producing pages that are useful to people. And that will probably be the first one, and try to either integrate SEO in their process and see where it can fit in, and probably talk to them, figure out what are different steps they go through, from page brief to compliance approval and publishing, and try to streamline it a little bit for them. The other team, which is very important to work closely with, is it again depends on the organization, but sometimes it's the developers. Sometimes you have a web production team which is in charge of the website experience overall, and they would be the ones who would be looking at producing pages or looking at doing user testing as well. And I find anything that's user-facing on the website, and the people who are responsible for it will be the first ones to go after and try to work closely with.
No, absolutely, and I think that's a very good way of looking at it. I'm just looking in the chat box as well, Nick, and obviously you're not watching that because I'm, we're here to talk and all that sort of thing. Freddie Sanchez has just asked, I'd be interested in learning how to create a better SEO strategy for certain industry like healthcare center or new home builders. As what we're talking about today kind of, fit any industry sector, or would you kind of tailor it specifically to a certain vertical or industry like Freddie's looking for in healthcare or new home builders? He's also mentioned on that message as well, do you offer classes? So just to you, Freddie, who are obviously you're on the line and listening, obviously Nick's details are on the screen. Grab Nick's details. He's a freelance SEO. Drop him a line, LinkedIn message, whatever it might be, or just tweet him. And he can pick that up and you guys can chat about that afterwards. But would you say that you have to tailor these per industry sector, or what we're saying here is here's a strategy that will fit for retail, for travel, for finance?
Mm-hmm. Well, I like to think that what I presented today would fit any company, and what would really depend on is how much budget or resource you can get to actually execute the strategy I presented today. Some smaller companies, or maybe companies with smaller budgets, may not have the budgets to, or the process in place and the people in place to do user testing. So you can probably drop that one off from the beginning. But in terms of content, reputation, communicating your expertise on the website, creating a good experience, helping users find out what they're looking for, and giving them users to choose you instead of clicking off and going in the search results, then that will always be relevant. And there is a lot, obviously, detail that can go to support each point I talked about today. And it's, each point can be adapted, but as an overarching theme, these are the three which should be kept in mind when planning SEO.
Definitely, no, and I think it's good that you're looking at it that way. It's kind of like yours is a top level view, and then you can break that down into the details. And then just thinking about detail and stuff like that, Christine is asking the questions, what tools do you use for detailed technical audit? I mean, obviously Deepcrawl is one of those tools, of course, but
we use it in Experian.
We are open. We are for years at Experian for sure. I mean, there's no better record of that one. But ultimately, it's your view as well. So, what tool do you use for detailed technical audit? And do you trust all of the notices / warnings these tools suggest? And do you try to fix all of them as an SEO? So as SEOs, all these warnings and things that's, you talked about how we have to learn on the job and, tinker and tailor and keep learning because SEO changes. Do you take all of these? I've got my view on this, but do you take all of your warnings that these tools spit out and go, I have to fix them all? Or is there more to it than that?
Well, there is more to it. Definitely. You should apply some thinking when you look at the results that different tools show you. In many cases, that would show an error for something that you've actually done on purpose. Say, for example, you're hiding login pages or pages which shouldn't be visible in the search results, and Ahrefs or SEMrush, and can't remember if Deepcrawl would do that, but it would say there is an error because there is a no index on that particular page. And you're like, well, I know, I don't care. And I personally use SEMrush, Ahrefs, Screaming Frog. I use PageSpeed Insights and Lighthouse and everything that you can think of from all the more little tools which you can use as a kind of Chrome extension as well. I use Chrome a lot, and I have so many little Chrome extensions and bookmarklets that help me get the right information. And what I find works well is try to get the full picture and extract as much information as you can from the tools you have, put it together, try to look for patterns, see if there is anything that really needs to be done and fixed right now, and prioritize accordingly. Sometimes you have a change as kind of surprising as no indexing your whole website, and a new website is launched and they've forgotten to allow Google to access it. It's like, okay, well, let's fix that and let's forget all about the other warnings. So there's definitely a need to think about the results and the errors to show you. But what I find is they're good. I mean, they'll be they're as good as they can be, but you can't take that report and just start picking each one randomly or going from the top. Think about priorities and all that and return.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think you hit the nail on the head. The tools are brilliant at highlighting stuff. I think what they sometimes lack is that ability to give context. And as you say, there's things that we then have to investigate and go, well, it's like that for a reason. The tool's saying it's a problem, but actually it needs to be like that. And we need to work with it like that because that's just the way it has to be. So we're adding value as SEOs. The tools are fantastic for doing all of the legwork. It's actually the value that we add as an SEO to that whole process. So then thinking about some other things and adding value, just when, question I've got in here from an anonymous attendee is when looking at a product page, for example, do you have a tick list of things that you would want to see? If so, what would be your, top 5 things that each page should include? So,
That's a good question. Yeah, I think start with what, why, and how on a very basic level. What is this page about? Is it immediately clear what the product is about? What kind of problems you're trying to solve? Why should people choose that product? And how they can actually get it. So if it's a piece of software, you're highlighting, this is the problem, this is how we solve it, this is why you should care about, these kind of users are using it. These are the case studies we have. These are the reviews we have. And this is how you can sign up and get a free trial, for example. If you think about it that way, just keeping those questions in your mind, what is it? Why should people care? And how they can get it? And I think that'll be a good starting point. And you can sit down and think, and you always find things to introduce to a page.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think with questions coming from everyone, which is brilliant. So thank you all of you attendees and all these questions, and great for all the feedback and positive clapping hands from many people that we've got on here. I'm conscious that we're fastly running out of time, so I'm gonna delve into a couple of more questions to get through some of this stuff for you guys, and then anything that we don't get answered for you, we'll look to get over to Nik and get some answers and maybe publish them as part of the DC write-up as well, so everybody gets their view on this sort of thing. Big topic always going on. You mentioned page speed insights as a tool. Everybody likes to have their view and their answer on this, and I've certainly talked about it for the last few years since the move towards mobile index. But what, from your experience, what are the top points that help you fix core web vital, speed issues or things that you see? Is there any quick wins that you've seen in your experience to improve a site? We're never going to get to a score of 100. Let's be honest. We need to. It'll be a completely unusable website that's had all of its content stripped out and everything's getting preloaded.
Yeah, just a blank HTML file.
Yeah. So we know we're not going to get to that. But is there any things that you would say are really quick fixes to focus on if the site is bad on core web vitals?
Quick fixes. I think an area which can be forgotten or not looked at is server speed. And your front end can be quite well optimized, but if it takes ages for the server to load everything for users, then that could be a quick fix depending on how big the company is and how if the infrastructure is archaic or not. But you can switch to a faster server and then see what happens. And you can troubleshoot that by just switching off certain elements on when a page loads before it renders. So you can switch off your CSS and then you can switch off your JavaScript and try to see where the bottleneck is. And I find often it can be server-side speed.
no, definitely. I think it's certainly something I watch as well. You move things around from development server and it's really slow, and you bring it to the live server environment, and everything speeds up. I've seen things like chat bots on sites massively slow stuff down because of the nature of all of the JavaScript.
Exactly.
Actually run kind of thing. So I think what's great with PageSpeed Insights, they give you really interesting sort of insights into quite a lot of detail as to all of that sort of data. If you use something like WebDev, which is a site as well, and look at the waterfall diagrams, one quick tip I've seen on that one is actually seeing what actually still loads post page load. You'll see there's sometimes a huge amount of stuff that just loads, which slows everything down. So that's just one little thing which I've seen, which I would throw in the mix as well on that one. Another question from an honest attendee, which I'm going to make the last one, guys. I've got so many questions here, and I really appreciate all these questions. I've got questions about link building in here, which I've got some very specific SEO questions. What, as I say, we'll look to do is to wrap all those questions into a bundle, get some answers for you on this, and supply them back to you as part of the write-up. But I am conscious that we're over time already, and it's 10 to 6 night here in the UK, and we're moving into the evening. So my final question to you, Nick, is to keep it on track with the things that we've been talking about today, is how should startups within highly competitive industries go about their SEO strategy, especially if they are operating on a restricted budget? I mean, it's a great question, and it's something which for many years people have had a different view on. So I'd love to hear what your take on that one is.
Oh, that's the $1 million question. How can you be successful in organic search in a competitive landscape without having the budget?
As a startup as well. I mean, I'm not suggesting you're a little store retailer that's stepping into Amazon's world, but how do you, with, as you say, you're an online startup, you need to generate inbound traffic. How well can you execute on an SEO strategy for that?
I think you have to think about the basics and start thinking, what are the things you can do from an SEO perspective that start driving results the soonest? So you would start off with potentially looking at your website as a whole, doing a website review, looking at your competitors, and maybe your competitors in real life are competing with you, but maybe in organic search, there will be opportunities for you to compete with people or companies which aren't as well, the strategy isn't as strong as you may think. And it's, I guess, the bottom line would be, what can you do that would deliver results in the short term to help you gain some traction, to try to get some traffic going, start learning from those people and visiting your website, and try to feed that into your website optimization. And you can think about link building, and that'll be a big part of it as a startup, and building that brand awareness. I like to think of link building as building brand awareness, and if you're getting your footprint around the web, you get your mentions in the press and getting links naturally, or hopefully. But it's something that may help you get there quicker if you're able to funnel some budget into that. But then also, again, it's hard. You have to juggle your on-site content and what kind of educational content you have and how your product pages are put together. It's hard. Like that is the challenge with startups and companies on a shoestring budget. It's prioritizing and figuring out where the key opportunities are and getting them that will deliver the most results in the short term.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think it's that blend of making sure you have that visibility and driving on traffic, highly relevant traffic terms for yourself. But then, as you say, that research piece, which is, who are my competitors, where are my competitors, and where can I play where they're not playing to generate and drive traffic for me. So it's always a difficult one. I just saw it pop up there, and I thought I'll throw that one in and get your view on it. But guys, we're 5 minutes over. We normally wrap these about 1:45. There's just so many questions come in. I really appreciate that from all of you. We are out of time, and as I say, a massive thank you to all of you guys that attended today and have stayed on and engaged with this, and really appreciate all the comments in the boxes on the sides. Carlos just now saying thank you, Tina saying thank you, Freddie saying thank you, Jessica saying thank you. I need to say
Thanks,
thank you
everyone.
to you all. They're all popping up. It's banging down the list here, Nick. You can look in there and see for yourself. For me, Nick, a massive thank you to you for taking the time to come and present. As I say, so much.
Appreciate the opportunity.
I promise we'll get these questions answered to you from Nick. If that's okay by Nick, we'll fire
for sure. Yeah.
A couple of lines on each one, and we can put them in as part of the blog write-up. Feel free to obviously reach out and book in if you guys are intrigued as to what Deepcrawl can do. Feel free to drop us a line, request a free consultation, a demo with ourselves. Obviously, go and grab one of our ebooks. Our marketing team's fantastic, and we write huge amounts of content and white papers and many things. And there's some great ebooks and very relevant, as you can see, for what we've been talking about today, as to thinking about what SEO is in 2022 and how you can build and implement a fantastic plan for the year going forward. Because as I say, Google just keeps shifting, and Google's continued to shift over the last 20 years. But it's I think it's come and grab some of this content. It's really worth its weight in gold for a read. As mentioned, there will be a full write-up on the DC blog following this webinar. We'll give you a link to the recording. We'll tell you all of the highlights, and certainly we'll get the answers to these questions as well, because I know there's a few of them lingering out there for sure. And we just started to touch on link building as I was wrapping up. Please do fill in a survey at the end of this session. It will pop up and just ask you a few questions as to how we did. We love to hear from you, whether it's good, bad, or as I mentioned, any sort of things that you'd like to hear from us on, or presenters that you'd like to see, and we'll go and chase them down in those topics for you. Our next webinar is on the 24th of February, creating and implementing SEO best practices and processes for your business with Cox Automotive. So please, if you haven't already, get signed up for that one. We've had amazing sign-up attendance for this one this week round. So let's see if we can continue to snowball on from there and keep those levels high. Really do appreciate that everybody's been on. My name is Jon Myers, and I've been a pleasure to host you again on this Deepcrawl webinar, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon in the future for our next session. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thank you.